Greetings. L Blacklight. L Blacklight. L Blacklight. Your motivator. So we got y'all got a lot of leaders today, a lot of people that just not realizing that they're at war when the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told you several years back that we're in the war of Armageddon. And he told you that the American way is falling. When America got off the gold standard and went to the Federal Reserve note in 1910 and 1913, that's when the white man's time was up, said the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. After all these years, y'all just now figuring out we at war. But let me tell you, guess what? He got a weapon of mass destruction that's taking care of two birds with one stone. It's killing two birds with one stone. The economic situation and the population situation. See, the Caucasian, he don't mind killing himself. He'll kill himself. He'll destroy the whole planet to keep the black man from taking over and ruling him or kicking him off the planet. He'll destroy and kill himself. He don't care. He'll blow up the planet. He got enough nuclear weapons to blow up the planet 5 times, 10 times, maybe 100 times. But this new pandemic weapon he got will take you off the planet, can take you off the planet and won't destroy no buildings, won't destroy property. It'll just destroy you. Check this out.
Microbes are microscopic organisms that we use to bake bread, brew beer, and lately engineer with synthetic DNA to create new biological systems. In this world of synthetic biology, a microbe is seen as a chassis or a structural frame to add genes and DNA. It'll get tested and have its performance improved so it can hopefully do something useful for the world. Yet this potential to modify living organisms and steer them towards global problems is often met with the dark side. It's a swing between promise and total peril, and sometimes called the half-pipe of doom. To understand why this framing exists, we have to go back to the early 2000s. The Human Genome Project was nearing the finish line, and scientists had new molecular tools to dream up promising applications. And a major terrorist attack hit New York City.
There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
In just a week's time, we have had 4 confirmed cases of anthrax, all with media connections, and a number of anthrax scares as well.
At that point, synthetic biology became a potential tool for a whole new kind of weapon.
So when most people think about a bioweapon, they think about some kind of organism. You might think about anthrax bacteria or the smallpox virus, and that is your weapon.
But turning an organism into a lethal pathogen that can do predictable harm requires more sophistication.
Not only do you have to have a pathogen, but then you have to actually know how to reliably hold it, grow it, and then determine ways that you can effectively disseminate it so that the bacteria or toxin wouldn't be destroyed.
After World War I, multiple state governments launched their own biological weapons programs as a research endeavor and stockpiling countermeasure.
And that's probably one of the most top secret pieces of our former bioweapons program, is that formulation of how you keep these things stable to survive as a weapon. These things are living organisms, so they are very finicky. In the Soviet biological weapons program, they tried to create a plague bacteria that was resistant to several different antibiotics. They created this super duper plague weapon, but actually it was a horrible weapon because it would just die. They couldn't have it survive in the environment.
With this focused experimentation, scientists ended up creating enough bioweapons to kill every person on the planet. But luckily, national governments signed a treaty to ban biological weapons. Decades later, huge investments in genetics made the tools and techniques cheaper and more accessible, enough for it to be possible to create an engineered synthetic pathogen. And that's why SynthBio and its quest to make biology easier to engineer set off alarm bells.
In 2002, a group of scientists from the State University of New York at Stony Brook created the first artificial poliovirus synthetically, not using any natural viral components. So that was a real radical innovation. At that time, a congressman picked up the New York Times that day, read about this artificial synthesis of the poliovirus, and really got freaked out. Then a lot of other federal entities got concerned about what happened here. Did we slip up? Should we have done more to have oversight over this?
This poliovirus study was actually funded by DARPA, an agency within the U.S. government.
All this controversy came out as this experiment, a blueprint for bioterrorism. I became very interested in sort of really wondering, is that the case? Is it now that easy to create a pathogen from scratch? And I wasn't sure. There's a lot of focus on the materials that the scientists basically could buy commercially to do their experiments, and the fact that they could download information off of the internet, so it wasn't really anything that required highly sophisticated material or equipment.
But there's more to this particular story.
I thought it would be interesting to go and interview the scientists involved. What was really fascinating is once I started kind of probing a little bit about the experiment, they suddenly came to describe this later part, which actually required a significant amount of expertise. Basically, if you couldn't do that part of the experiment would fail. You couldn't actually create the artificial poliovirus. But you wouldn't know that by reading any of the newspaper reports. You wouldn't know that even by reading the scientific paper itself.
And that widely unreported part involved a famous cell line and cow serum.
To make this artificial virus, it actually requires a very rigorous level of purity of these HeLa cell extracts. These HeLa cells are grown in this cow serum. When they've tried to do this experiment using cow serum bought at different times of year, that can actually cause a failure in experiments. They're hypothesizing because they're not really sure, but maybe in these different times of the year, the cows are eating different kinds of things, and that at a very micro level in the cell actually makes a huge difference.
Whoa.
From my perspective, I would just like to see more robust kinds of assessments on these technologies instead of the quick jump to go, oh my God, material equipment, a garage lab, oh my.
The Federal Reserve is a central bank. That's right. It is a central bank. A central bank attains, ladies and gentlemen, its commanding position from its governmentally granted monopoly of the currency issue. And this is often the unsung key to its power. Invariably, private banks are prohibited from issuing notes, and the privilege is reserved to the central bank. Now, that's the first quote, one of 4, that I left off with yesterday. And we're going to continue from that point. We talked about the Federal Reserve being made up of 12 centrally located Federal Reserve banks in the 12 Federal Reserve regions of the United States. You learned that the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It is not owned by the federal government. We talked about a court case where the court revealed the fact that, and I will quote the court's own words, quote, "We conclude that the Federal Reserve banks are not federal instrumentalities for purposes of the FTCA, or Federal Tort Claims Act, but are independent, privately owned, and locally controlled corporations."
Now this is where Allah got to show that He's Allah. The original Asiatic black man. You see what he's up against. You see what kind of weapons Satan got. See, ain't no spook God coming out the sky to save you. You got to save yourself. That's what you're here for. To prove that you're a righteous being and you must destroy all evil. So most of y'all gonna run away from this. When you slow your blow. But it's better late than never to wake up and defend yourself by any means necessary. I'm Black Ike, Black Light, L Black Light, your motivator.